The issue that we see playing out so often is that we are told by our church leaders to treat our wives like Jesus treats the church.
Mm-hmm.
And we compartmentalize Jesus's interaction and his behavior with the church and only select a few of the behaviors we think we need to implement. Being a servant,
Sacrificing your life.
self-sacrifice. Those are the two things that we see most often happen. And then men will lose themselves in that. And what's up? What's happening, Joe?
Frame.
Mike? Yo.
Some
What kind of
plastic.
frame are you going to use to build your house, Joe?
Solid mahogany.
Yeah.
Ooh, mahogany.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that's
It's
my
a noble
nickname
wood.
up in Fargo, mahogany?
Why is
It's a
that?
good one.
one
How'd
of
you pick
my
it up?
one of my friends that I used to work with, he got like I don't know, he forgot my last name, and so he just ran with mahogany.
That actually kind of makes sense.
Because they're
Mahogany,
kind of
mahogany,
close,
yeah.
and so
That's
it stuck, and ever since then, like literally, he just calls me mahogany or mahogs, and like my
Is that the same crazy friend that you have or no?
No, different.
No,
He's got a
Mahogs.
different. That guy's got a different nickname for me. But yeah, even on my like work username, it's mahogs.
I love it. I love it, dude. Mahogany is a good wood to
I'll
build a
take it.
frame
It's a
out
good
of,
tone
too.
wood.
Yep. Lots of the best guitars in the world
Are made out of mahogany.
my favorites. My favorite tone wood.
What's that Anchorman line about smelling of rich mahogany or something? I can't remember.
It's probably varnish. It's not even mahogany. It's like, I love the smell of lacquer thinner. Oh yeah. So the red pill community is getting hit, right, Mike? You were telling us.
Oh yeah, I just noticed that everyone's kind of like, especially in the Christian community, they're just coming at the red pill hard.
It's half-baked ideas, right? So they're like, they don't
Well,
know what
it's-
it is. They
it
hear a
looks
couple
like a
bad
straw-
parts. and they're
Yeah,
like,
it's like they
I
saw
will
some
kill you.
TikToks of Fresh and Fit and so the lead attorney or whatever.
they
and
got
then-
sound bit.
Yeah, and
I
then
can
it's
see
like,
how that would
yeah.
raise some hairs. Dude,
Yeah,
for
I mean,
sure.
it's
I
valid
listen
from
to the
that
way
standpoint.
that some of them guys talk, and I'm like, ooh.
Yeah.
Oof. Like you're really
Some of the
yeah. If you were to clip some
like
of
the one
Myron
guy was
stuff,
talking
about like punish bad behavior, how like just it just sounds.
This sounds
like you're bending your wife over and spanking her.
He does.
Like, okay,
It's like,
punish bad, reward good behavior. I don't know. It just sounds weird.
I think some of them choose certain words knowing it will get shared more. 'Cause he's not literally being
provocative.
like physically punish someone.
Right.
He's basically like, if you're gonna set boundaries,
Be
with some-
accountable.
Yeah,
How about that? Like
well,
just be
If
accountable
you're setting boundaries
I
up
agree.
on behavior you don't like actually stick to them.
for sure. And
Um,
if something you do like, then
you just
support
walk
that
away.
as well.
Well,
But
I
yeah,
think-
you don't have to get. In an
I think
argument
that
about
when
it. Christians hear about some secular, movement or ideology or some kind of, this thing they have to encounter, we're all lazy. Most people take stuff at face value. They're sound bit. They're not going to sit there and actually
Sound bit.
absorb the information.
Mhm.
Read the books.
They're gonna hear the sound bites and get gripey about stuff and be like, "Let's burn this down."
Yeah.
Hey, that's what people do with,
Yeah.
with a lot of things. We
Yeah.
all just take
Hey,
the
I did it.
superficial values of whatever is there, the stereotypes, and then we digest that and we're like, "That's what that is." Yeah.
Well, part of the problem is there's a
Right.
lot of mess in the space now. It's the new thing. It's exploded in the last couple of years. So everyone's trying to get there's a lot of grifters showing up.
For sure.
And so there is like a lot of questionable stuff for sure.
Well, I
but
think a lot of the reason why grifters have been so successful is because young men want. It's just like we talked about in the grifting podcast: 6-pack abs in 3 months.
Mhm.
Like this stuff. I want to make $60K in a month. Time.
Mhm.
Yeah, doing OnlyFans girls pages. Right. Not everyone can do that, dude. And even if you did have it, it's just like the stories of people who won the lottery. Their lives suck usually. Like they don't get better.
Well, and you
No.
can't treat women the way Andrew Tate treats women if you're working. I'm not saying anyone should. I'm not judging here, but like some of these like high school kids acting like Tate, it's like that's probably not going to get you any ahead.
It's just like back
It's
in the
not gonna
day.
get
The question
you
is,
ahead.
are
It's
they
like-
actually acting like him? Like we're
they
getting
want
told.
to a
we're
lot of the time.
Well, it's
They
what
want
happens
to.
naturally. They
Just
look,
read the comment
they
section.
personify.
But that's
They read the comment section. They're talking. They're using Andrew Tate-isms. to
Well,
speak,
yeah.
you know?
Tate-isms.
So it's like Tate-isms.
But it's almost become a joke. Like what color is your Bugatti? Like, none of these guys are buying Bugattis or actually
No.
think that's a serious statement.
But the same thing happened in high school. Just kids, they're listening to like some gangster rap about throwing down kilos and got 100 fat stacks,
Living in the
that.
suburbs.
And they're like singing,
Mom's
all
washing
yeah.
their dishes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're
Well,
18.
same with Cardi
Never
B.
paid their car
Embarrassing.
insurance. Didn't buy their own car. It's like
I don't know.
you
I think a
haven't-
lot of the Cardi B listeners are true sluts. So
Yeah.
maybe they do. live
That's
up
easy to
it.
do.
Yeah,
It's
that's
a
what I was
lot
gonna say.
harder to go out and sell some keys
Gotta
and
be a
throw down a
gangbanger,
9
bro. Yeah.
and do that stuff on the alleyway than
Yeah.
it is to go listen to music.
Yeah,
Girls
but then
can
they get the cheap
show
chain,
the punani
you know.
easy, and they can become hoe easy.
Yeah.
Should we get
Oh,
back
easy.
to the topic
Yeah.
of the day?
Well, frame. Okay, so frame. for
What
those-
is frame?
I was going to kind of get into that. So, frame, for somebody who doesn't understand it, it's a term that actually comes from sociology, psychology, interactions with human beings. It's when human beings have sort of a perspective, they have their own perspective on reality and what they see, and then that frame of reference, whatever's in focus, whatever's inside of that frame, is either going to is good. There's going to be a negotiation between any kind of relationship. It doesn't matter if it's between a woman or your mom or your boss at work. So frame is usually defined by a body of expertise. Frame is usually dominant. What's the dominant frame is the question,
It's
right?
kind of leading that situation.
Right.
Right.
Who's leading the
Who's
situation?
in the power? Who's in the power seat? Who's leading the situation? Who has control over what the next action is going to be? Who has the greatest influence?
Right. And so Rollo will say, like, it's important to understand as creatures, we have intrinsic frame. We're born with it. When you're a kid, your mom and dad, you're in their frame.
Mm-hmm.
They're leading your life. They're making you food. They're telling you what to do. You, as a matter of instinct, know to listen, or you should. So as you get older, that frame, you start to negotiate frame, say at work. If you have a boss or you're trying to learn something from somebody, that person you're going to be in their frame because they have the expertise, the body of knowledge. They have this power,
Sure.
control. They
And then
have
it might change. You
influence,
might be
right?
like, hey, I need a raise. And then all of a sudden your frame comes in.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the way frame typically works. So when you're trying to take frame and put that into the context of red pill, specifically for women relationships, heterosexual relationships, what I see Rollo trying to express in the red pill trying to express, because Rollo's first rule is frame, right? Why is this so important to Rollo? Because most of the men in the gynocentric society norms that we're in right now, to use more of his, to codify, okay? So these words are all codifying something, okay? Codifying means to codify, to express through term something that's going on. So gynocentric reality that you live in society
Happy
is
wife, happy
feminine
life.
agenda. Yeah, happy wife, happy life. There's all these different things that kind of come to express what that is, all right? So why is it the first lesson or the first rule? Because most young men and men who are entering into the dating world don't have enough self-respect or even a semblance of self-value. What are they bringing to a relationship? Do they bring real value to the relationship? Of course, but it's unbeknownst to them. They're oblivious to this. So I think Rollo and most of the level-headed red pillars out there, the red pill guys, would want the young men to start developing a sense of value and knowing that that is their frame and they have to build it and they have to be able to be aware of it. Right?
And I think the programming that we all get as men, because I was thinking, like, this conversation, I never had, like, you don't have it with anyone. No one tells you about it. You kind of learn it trial and error.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of programmed as a man with this blue pill mentality, the Disney mentality of relationships, where you just kind of like bend over and hand the frame like immediately to the woman and just appease her every need.
I guess it comes down to like opening doors, pulling seats out.
Well, that stuff is
Chivalry.
I'm not
right.
saying
And-
it's wrong.
well, yeah.
I think it's great. I mean, I was raised that way. It's just like
Well, even if you're a red pill guy, you're doing that. Like
it just kind of goes farther.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Into like, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? What do you? And you just
Yeah, she's just leading
you
everything.
lose your own taste in life. You lose what you want to do. Like
But that, and
if
I
you
think-
want to go on a date, well, don't continue.
Well, I was gonna say, I think we get taught, like most of us, especially in the Christian community, you're just kind of programmed with the mentality of happy wife, happy life. So it's like,
Well,
just
let's
keep
take
mom
that-
happy,
Yeah.
and keep her happy, and then everything's good.
Well, let's take that apart.
Right.
Okay. Let's go.
Why does
dive
that
deeper.
happen?
Let's dive deeper into that first issue within our specific sort of focus, which is Christian men here, women, of course, as well. The issue that we see playing out so often is that we are told by our church leaders to treat our wives like Jesus treats the church.
Mm-hmm.
And we compartmentalize Jesus's interaction and his behavior with the church and only select a few of the behaviors we think we need to implement. Being a servant,
Sacrificing your
sort of
life.
self-sacrifice. Those are the two things that we see most often happen. And then men will lose themselves in that. And we fail to understand Jesus's, what he did for the church was he redeemed it. He's going to judge it. He also admonishes it. He loves it. It's encompassing a real relationship, but he is the head.
And you're
right?
saying
So
they
we're
only
in
focus on a
submission to it.
couple of these
So yeah,
points.
we only focus on a couple of these points, and so in turn, we have men who are just shells of men, right? Because they think they're doing the right thing by being a doormat, by just listening, and basically whatever the wife says. Because a happy wife is just not going to happen.
I'll
I
tell
don't
you
care.
what, Old Testament God was killing Jews and killing people. I mean, if they didn't do it, he said it was immediate, like striking you down. The earth is opening up. A bunch of you all is going to die. We're going to have some pestilence. There was, there were some consequences to actions for sure.
Yeah, and usually it's sin equals death, right? So, I mean, if you're doing coddling, pandering to your wife, are you really loving her? Are you? And these are the questions we're asking the blue-pilled out, sort of these men who haven't put enough time into their reading of the Bible. They haven't been reflective enough what a man should be. These men are just being fed by the popular conventions of the Western church. This is what a man should be, and they're surrounded by men who are doing the same exact thing. They're overweight. They're not They don't have any desires or hobbies that are being supported by their wives. Usually, they're not really alive so much as they're a shell of a man. And so the issue is we're not absorbing Christ as a person. We're picking pieces in like the progressive Christians are, and we're saying this feels good. Because the hard part is, say, admonishing your wife, leading your wife, truly leading your wife, right? There is no such thing as a happy wife. And half the time when the Old Testament
There is no such thing as a happy wife.
I wouldn't say there's a happy wife, like as if something you can, like what I mean by that is you can't change somebody. It's kind of like where we
What you
began
mean is like
talking
your
right now.
wife's happiness should not, her emotional state should not be dependent upon 100%
Exactly,
on you.
and that's fair for everybody. I mean, otherwise
could
you
it-
could go out and just like influence people to do whatever. That doesn't work that way in this world. You
Agreed.
have to be accountable for your own emotions.
So how does
I was gonna say, so how does frame now come into that?
I think frame is the recognizing the roles that you've been given. Is if we're talking from a Christian perspective, talking about the roles that have been given for man and for woman. And this is where you enter into the messy topic of egalitarianism, right? So people get this correct. Man and woman are valued the same in God's eyes. Paul says there's no Greek, there's no Gentile, there's no Jew, there's no man, there's no woman. God sees him as his children. So God loves these people equally, right? Their value is equal. However, we're not equally good at stuff. Men have things they're better at. Women have their share of things they're better at. That's because we're supposed to be on a team and fulfill our weaknesses or their strengths and vice versa. It makes sense, right? So in the church, they'll be like, well, we're not equal. You say, well, men and women aren't equal. That sounds like people are, when you say that, what they're really hearing is men and women are not equally valuable. So there has to be a distinction made, right?
Right.
So when frame comes into this, women are submitting to their husbands. Their husbands should have earned through their lives the ability to make the choices through self-sacrifice, some of the stoic principles you see in the Bible.
quote, build a frame,
Build a
worth
frame.
living in, right?
Have discernment, have some kind of semblance of being a provider for your family, all these other things you have to do.
Once the man has those things and has accomplished his frame, the woman has to fit herself into that. That's where God made her to fit. That's what the Bible tells us. Woman is supposed to submit. Submit doesn't mean agree. People hate that. Submit doesn't mean, oh, I see where you're coming from. Submit means,
like doormat.
No, submit is a brutal word when you really want to take it apart. Submit means you're going to listen even if you disagree. Otherwise, you're just agreeing.
Or some people would call that maturity.
Well, if you're in the military or you're some other form of hierarchy, you're going to submit, right? And so a wife is going to have to trust that her husband is making the right decision, even if she doesn't agree with it. That's going to have to happen sometimes. That's why she submits to the husband. There's tons of reasons why. We might look at it from a biological perspective. Women have an incredibly tumultuous hormonal phase that they go through every single month. They get more emotional. Every single woman who has a period will know this. If you've grown up with women, this is a natural function of their biology, and it causes their hormones to do a lot of crazy things. And so it makes sense that with a man in the background, if they were to encounter some kind of a critical thinking thing, they could rely on their man during that process to make the decisions, right? So there's one. The bottom line is God says it should be that way. So we have to accept that. The problem in the church is we're not living in the man's frame. We're living mostly in the woman's frame, okay? So that's where I see frame from a biblical perspective. However, there's other frame is so prevalent in life. You could talk about it from tons of different perspectives.
So let's give some examples of frame. I was listening to that link that you sent us, and Fresh and Fit, what's his name? Myron was talking about, okay, so you're going on a date with a girl, right? You're going to want to know where you're going to go. You're going to want to tell where you're going to go to eat, and then maybe get some drinks afterwards, and maybe find another spot, and then
basically you're in control of the date.
Basically have an idea of what the hell is going on that night. And it sounds ridiculous when I hear this from him, because I'm like, dude, are there really people and kids? And John was sat and looked at me in the truck and was like, we are talking to the wrong people. Like, I can't believe that guys need to hear this shit. Like,
I know.
You don't go out on a date and not know what you're gonna do. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, I think it's more so
Joe and I get stuck talking to people where we think they're on. I mean, there's people on different levels.
I'm just
here.
Whoa.
I don't understand where some of these people are, dude.
Yeah, I don't. And so I think that example for a lot of guys, like, pull your credit card out, like, be ready to pay for stuff. Like, some of this stuff is very basic, fundamental.
Like, you didn't learn that in third grade when you took your girl out? You didn't give her like an apple and told her we're gonna go do this thing? Like, come on.
I've heard women complain about that. They like want a man with a plan, and they just show up and like don't have to think about anything.
So I guess there is
that's not
problem going on with guys that don't understand that, because to me it seems very self-evident that that's what it would initiate your mind going on. Like, I'm going on a date. What am I going to do? This is what I want to do.
I think the what happens that is the problem
What
is
are
the
they
guy will be like texting the girl, like they're asking them what they want to do, and it not sounding very kind of wishy-washy in the plan.
Yeah.
And it's like the girl just wants you to basically tell her, show up at 7 p.m. We're doing this, this, and this. Wear this because it's this kind of venue, and then boom.
And you don't say, like, this is where I need to sort of condescend, so that people will understand.
Yeah, do it.
Like, this is not Andrew Tate world. You say these things in a courteous, charismatic way, okay? You're like, hey, I know this great spot that you're gonna love, and we're gonna go here. I love it. Like, you sell it in a way that she's excited to go there.
Well,
you don't just
you're
say
excited to go there.
Absolutely,
You should be excited about going
because
with these
this is the way it
places.
follows. If
By
you like-
yourself,
right?
And even if a chick is with you, great.
But if you're by yourself, you should enjoy the night as well. And if she likes you, it follows that she's gonna want to know who you are and the stuff that you like.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
so that
And-
just
and
like
you should
it
be
follows.
proud
It
of
should
that.
be
And
common
if
sense.
she doesn't like that, then she doesn't like that.
Yeah.
Move on.
if you take
Or
her,
if she has a great idea, oh, well, this place is opened up tonight, I think it'd be great. My friend's bartending or whatever, be like, oh, that sounds cool too. Consider it. You don't have to be like, we're not doing that. We're doing Tate tonight.
yeah,
You
like-
don't have to do that
oh,
either.
your bartender friend wants to give us a few free drinks. Fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
See,
not worried about
I
that.
think they would push back on you and saying that they would be like, that's entering her frame. It's her.
Okay, see now
Okay,
that's
no,
where
no, this
that's where
opens up
me and
something
Mitzi
super
now,
cool.
now- okay,
'Cause
great.
I wanna say-
because here's
yeah.
this is what you have to understand for frame. This is what I think Myron and a lot of these unfortunately redeemed betas. They're like super beta. You could tell they used to be hardcore nerds. I didn't really have that experience. I was always, and I'm not trying to gloat or anything, but I never felt like an outcast. Probably because I was. You know, I traded a bunch of schools. I would always have to. Joe and I were always
Raised in 6 states.
Yeah,
dude.
we didn't have that idea that I wanted to be that guy. You know, like I was like, we're happy being ourselves. But what I see with these guys is they think they're exiting frame, but they're forgetting they're the guys who are signing off on stuff. Like as long as you're the guy signing off on it, and you're saying it's okay.
Oh, I think that's a good idea.
I think that's a good, like in
That
the
sounds
affirmation, in the affirmative, that's also a sign of power.
What if it is a better idea? What if it is a better idea?
That's the
because
point.
it just might happen, and that's cool. Go
Like
along
she's like,
with it.
you want your old fashioned this way, and she said, why don't you do it this way? And you're like, well, I like it this way. Period.
Oh,
maybe on the second
let's
one,
go
I'll
down
try
the
it.
cardboard box down there, have some water. We go to the Ritz-Carlton, have some whiskeys. It's like, well, I'd rather go over there. That sounds better, right?
Yeah.
I think that, and also, so frames and like coming into someone else's frame, I think some of those guys are a little paranoid about
That's what
that.
I was saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
because you're still signing off.
You're still signing off on it.
You're still the guy with the
Because you're
signature.
placing yourself in some situation that you either approve of or you do not.
Yeah.
So
because it begins to sound like that whatever she suggests, you have to veto.
right.
Otherwise, you're in her frame, right? That doesn't sound right to me.
Yeah, I would agree.
You know, there's something about that feels
I don't want to say they would.
feels
I'm
control
guessing,
freaky.
Yeah, it
we're
does.
kind of we're putting words a little bit in their mouth, but I think the idea is, especially like on a first date, that you already have a plan, you have an agenda, and if they like come in and then try to do your whole plan because they want to go get their favorite food at this place, and it's just like,
That would be
well,
a little weird.
I'm paying for all this, like I'm inviting you out, like we're gonna do.
Okay, so let's talk about that situation. So there are times where you're going to be exiting your frame for negative reasons, right? And as the man, you are the decision maker. You're the evaluator. You're the scrutinizer of truth and lie. That's where Adam failed, right? He's like, this fruit, all right, let's go into Eve's frame, baby. You know, even though I was in God's frame and everything was great, that was a bad move. So we don't want to make that move. But those kind of moves do happen. So we'll talk about those Adam fruit moves here. When you have a really good plan, right, and the woman goes out and you can tell that she knows you like this or you want this, and it's not a selfish thing, you want to share with her something, and she purposely goes out of her way to ruin it, and you allow her to do that. You pander her, you coddle her because you're worried of her emotional distress or whatever might be going on. That's a big buzzer no. That's a red flag that you've stepped out of your role as being a man. And I don't know what you call that. You're just being a bitch. Not a bitch. Really what I want to say is what you've done is you've sold your birthright for a bowl of lentils at that point.
So we can also
that's
talk.
what you've
Right,
done.
you're right. And it's like, what are the important things in frame? Like that first date, it's going to be really important because they're getting to know each other. They're starting to see like, oh, what is he like? What is she like? Where are we going? How does he do life on a first date, right? But then, like, let's say if you take frame further to say like a married couple or like a long term, some of those decisions you're not always going to want to be making your own self, right?
Mhm.
Part of being an authority is being able to say delegating authority.
Absolutely.
Is saying you're responsible for this. I trust you because you're a smart, intelligent, wise human being that I chose to be with me because I'm smart and wise, and I like to think that I'm making a good decision by having you by my side. So I want you to help take care of some of these things.
She's a reflection of who
She's
you
a-
are
right,
in many
right.
ways.
So I wouldn't want to just be I don't want a 15-year-old child.
Right.
You know what I mean? I
Well,
would want her to be making some of those decisions
Right.
in the future frame, and that's part of that. What is she good at? You know, what am I good at? How are we complementary? You know,
And
Absolutely.
part of some of that, like, let's just say to back up a little bit. So we talked about building your frame and kind of building yourself into the man you are, because you got to build yourself first into that man that a woman wants to come and have you as a
Absolutely.
leader.
right? So
Okay.
they talk
So
about
that's like
six,
step-
you know-
6 foot, 6
Yeah.
pack, 6
Okay.
figures,
So-
6 months of savings.
I had the very nice opportunity to talk to Rollo today because I wanted to ask him after watching your the podcast where there's like the 6 guests on there. I read the book. There's everything talking in the affirmative of what frame is, and so I was like, Rollo, what is frame not?
you know, and we practice that. It's a good practice for people because we always like to say what stuff is. And many times when things are very similar, like in Bible study last time we had, what's the difference between trust, belief, and faith? And in that exercise, it was very helpful to talk about what those terms were not, to distinguish them.
Because they hold
hold so much in common. So frame, unfortunately, holds a lot in common with tons of words like character, your dreams, you know, your perspective, right? There's all these words that have stuff in common. So Rollo said, well, here's what it's not. Just because I think we're going into like the 3 different phases, which I shared with him, and he's like, that's great. He's like, that's absolutely true. That's the way it should be looked at. But frame is not game. Because you brought that up, the 6 foot, six pack, six figures,
6 month savings.
Yeah, and then now guys are adding frame to that. And some of the more level-headed, like, you know, the godfathers of Red Pill are like, hold on, that's actually not, frame is not a part of that. It's not something you turn on and turn off. And the big part is like you do not impose frame. Rollo was very careful to explain that. He's like, you're not pushing your frame on somebody. He's like, you earn that position. People enter into it.
Yeah,
exactly. So frame is not something you're imposing, and it's not game. So I wanted to say those 2 things before we went into the...
That's good.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that I think we can just briefly cover that some of the stuff that's not frame, like building yourself into the man, both financially, physically. Like you got to earn the frame, like you said, that someone's going to want to come into and be a part of.
You got to cut down the mahogany, build it.
Cut down the mahogany.
Right. Yeah.
So when I think of that, and then I think of kind of like what some of the problems that you can experience with that is when she comes into your frame that you've built your life around, and then she, like I kind of view it as you're on this mission towards, you know, let's just say your purpose. Maybe that's, you got physical like gym goals, you got business goals, you got purpose goals. And because she wants more and more of your time, she keeps pulling you away from your mission. And then I kind of view that you're compromising your frame in that standpoint over, you know, and that's where they say like a death or betatization by 1,000 cuts.
Right.
Like the more and more you can concede on some of those things, and then you end up she ends up kind of molding you into the man she's no longer attractive to.
Right.
And, let's just take
an
an example of that. Let's just say like you have a pretty solid gym routine 5 days a week or something, and it's built you into this man she's attracted to. Now she's pulling you away from that over and over again.
Over and over again is
like
the key word there, right?
Yeah. Say 6 months from now, you're going to the gym half the amount of time you used to. And I view that as you totally gave in your frame there, buddy.
Right, and you can compare this to any kind of sacrifice you're going to have in life. It's going to take something to get ahead. I don't care if you're learning to play the guitar, if you're going to read this book, if you're going to have a friendship, if you're going to have a brotherhood, if you're going to just take on a bunch of college classes, if you're going to, you know, save a bunch of money, you're going to make sacrifices. So if you're at that point in your life where your frame is built to your liking, where you're ready to say, I'm going to sacrifice some of this time that I have, my life, for another mate, for my mate,
right?
For someone that I'm willing to invest in long term. Then you're going to have to be ready, like John said, for how long are you giving up that? So in the beginning, you might have that little bit of a honeymoon phase where you're really enjoying each other, and you're going to make some concessions. Maybe you'll miss a workout here and there. Maybe you'll miss a meal of chicken and rice, and you might go out and have a sushi dinner night or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That just can't run long term. That can't run long term.
You need to learn how to turn it off.
That can't run long term. That's a program that runs for a short amount of time, and then it's that you wouldn't want that to run long term. You wouldn't want that to run long term. In fact, you want to be careful with how much you would do that when in the beginning of a relationship. You want to be doing meaningful things together. You know, not just celebration things all the time.
Yeah, you need to sort of. She needs to be holding the bow and together, and you need to be both aiming the arrow together at some point.
Right, because you're building a new frame essentially.
Yeah,
and you're doing it well. You're putting down a good foundation.
And I think what you're saying is so important for people to understand, because there might be, especially with some of the more red pill educated young men, like they need to understand the honeymoon process is healthy. You know, if you're not going and getting ice cream and, you know, tiramisu after dinner, and because your gym routine's so stringent, and you're not doing it right with
If
your
you're not
woman
heading
in
out to the
beginning.
beach at 12 a.m.
Yeah,
every now
12
and then,
a.m. doing
just,
some crazy
you know.
heroin addict, crack-headed shit, because that's what you should be doing when you're in love. You make those memories, and those memories are yours and your wife's, and you're both crazy together, and you both remember your crazy moments, and in a way, it galvanizes you together. But like Joe had said, you need to learn when Christ in your life is changing direction for you, where your goals have to sort of coincide, and you both have to say, we have to serve the community, ourselves, our family. This honeymoon phase is coming to a close.
Well,
and
that's
it's such
not the
a
purpose.
good thing.
It's not the purpose. You celebrating because you found someone you really
You don't
love.
have your wedding day
But the purpose
every
of
single
that-
day. You
the
don't have
purpose
that.
of that is to build a life together, and
Yeah.
that is what you guys need to get good at doing together. Which means that frame has to remain,
Agreed.
because that's how you've built your life so far. So if you're going to continue building it, it must stay intact.
Right.
You
And
know?
so go ahead.
I was gonna say, I suppose part of it, and you guys can answer this better, is you gotta, if you understand yourself and your frame, and you know that, okay, if I bring someone in, it's obviously going to need compromise. And I think
Absolutely.
you need to know ahead of time where are your areas of compromise.
Agreed.
Because if you're conceding the points like purposefully, then it's fine. You're still within your frame. If you're just letting the death by 1,000 cuts happen, then you're conceding out of like just almost just not being aware. Then you're losing the frame.
You're
right, and
losing
it's
the frame.
hard when you really like somebody,
Mm-hmm.
because then all of a sudden you're like, well, I could give up this, and this red flag doesn't mean this, and then your frames just dissolve.
And really what it comes down to is your frame is, as a man, knowing the right decisions and when to take them. And your
Okay.
wife seeing that
And
over
this
and
comes-
over again,
yeah.
and then her fighting you on certain issues, then she sees, and her trust will begin to grow as she understands that you made the right decisions at the right time. Even
'Cause
if
if
they
you- if
were,
you're- if
even
you're
if she didn't agree with them. So
you're making
it's not
those-
necessarily that because your frame has just changed is what it's been. It's like the frame that you want and should have, you just threw that out. That's what you did. And you traded it in for something that's going to hurt everybody around you, because you now have an inverted process where you're not at the head of the household and she is. And what the heck is going to happen there? Destruction.
Yeah,
every
you're-
single time.
Yeah, you're
I-
probably going to either punch out or she's going to get divorced because you're not the person that you sold
Yeah.
yourself to be in the beginning, and now she's stuck with someone that's like I didn't want to be like this. Well, you said you were going to be like this. Well, I'm not really like this, and that was your call. That was you giving up your frame, like you were saying, not being real about what you're preparing yourself for.
Yeah.
And women want to see a guy that can stand up for what he believes in. And that means
And they're going to
saying
shit
no.
test you to see if
That's
you will.
what that is,
And
right?
well, that's the only way
describe
you're
that,
going to
so-
be able to lead, anyways. Because when you get into a stress situation or you get into something where things aren't going right, you're going to have to be able to stand up and know the way to get out. And that's what a man, what you should be valued as, the authority, the head of the household. That type of.
I got news for you guys.
authority.
That is not a pretty situation. I don't care how you cut it. I don't care if you're the guy with millions of dollars, a Bugatti, Top G, or whatever. Those situations are going to be rough. It's just like when you watch We Were Soldiers or any of these like real battle military movies. There is no good decision. Every decision is rough. Every decision is going to incur losses. That's what men were made to do. So you need to get used to being in those scenarios and saying, this is my job. I can feel the pressure. The wall's closing in. It's hot here. This is where I have to pray, ask the Lord what to do, but not trade frame. Not start to skip down
You
that
don't go
road.
lose your nuts and go, what do I do?
No, you can't.
You hold that back real well, and you start to really use your mind, and you pray, like you said, and you find out what you're made out of, and you continue to put yourself in those situations. Like we were saying earlier on, it's like you could. So many of these guys, I think, are afraid of rejection. They're afraid of trauma. They're afraid of a girl being like, I don't like you, or just being displeased with them. It's like, well, who cares? You know what I mean? Like it's
roller
not
spinning plates.
It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. And I think if these guys got more used to like this quote rejection or this trauma that they might and being okay with it, not only within their dating but within other parts of their life where it's like it's okay to go through this.
Well,
type
there's
of
gonna
stuff.
be-
It's good. In fact, invite it in so you
Yeah.
can get better at handling
Because
it.
there's not always a preamble to when those circumstances come. They're going to blindside you. You know, so the more you're connected with your purpose in being a man and finding yourself in those circumstances, better you are going to be a man, because it's all about maintaining frame.
Right.
The guy who maintains frame is the guy who's like the gym. You're in the last 4 reps, man. You're burning, you're dying. That is where your rational side that God has gifted you with as a man. He's giving you the right tools. This is not like you're just sent out. God equips those he sends out. So it's not like you're digging in the sand and just hoping to find you're digging in the right place. You're going to find what you should find. Just keep digging. You got the rationality, you have the tools. So that's where you need to be. And you need to settle into that spot, and you need to find yourself in that spot and be there and be excited for the next time it comes. And when you're exhausted after you've been through it before, you know, it's happening again, you know. So it's a big deal for men to understand that's what makes you a man. Like, that's what makes you a man. It's not the cars. It's not the. No. There's plenty of guys that have no frame and they have a bunch of money, right? They have a bunch of businesses. They have a bunch of all this worldly possession and stuff like that, but they don't know how to handle people in that way. I think of like Jeremy Maguire. I watched that movie the other day. It's hilarious. The red pillars would laugh. But this guy's got everything, right? You know, loses it all. He's trying to be idealistic and all this and that. And you start to understand that it's not about your accolades that give you frame. It's about your character, your principles. It's about the stuff that you can't take away. And when we first tried this podcast, I was bringing out a book. This is going to be a tangent, but it's going to fit in nicely here. The master of frame that I think everybody should know about is Viktor Frankl. He is a Jew. I think he was a psychologist put into a concentration camp. And you want to talk about fighting for frame? That's all he did. He was trying to fight for his dignity, for something, for hope, you know, in a place where all they were doing was taking away every humanity that he had.
Yeah, it reminds me of like Nelson Mandela. He never saw himself as a prisoner.
Yeah, but that man had frame.
He found himself
the same thing
in prison. He found himself as president. He found himself in a small tribe out in the middle of nowhere. He had his frame constantly with him. That's why you bring up character as like one of those things you can bring into it.
Because it's not about the cars. It's not about the money. It's not about the education. A lot of those things can be confusing.
Well, they can give you clout. And it makes your frame, it can make it shiny, but it doesn't make it strong.
It doesn't mean you're going to keep your frame.
It doesn't mean that when you lose all that stuff, your default is going to be a good dude. Because that's really what you're talking about. Is like, what is your frame when it's bared down to nothing?
Yeah.
And that is when you're going to be tested in your family, when you have those high stress situations, when you get hit from all angles, when you're stressed out, you haven't had enough sleep, you've had severe losses. The world's against you, your body's failing you, your friends are failing
Brutal,
you,
man.
Your finances are gone. Who are you in that default mode, that deep default? That's where you're going to really find out who you truly are. And that's how you really want to prepare your frame. So the date doesn't really seem like that big of a deal. Where are we going for dinner? You know? Yeah. Oh, I like this place. And this place, you know, it's not something you have to overthink and blow out of proportion because it's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah, because if you know yourself and you have like, I'm not nowhere near Viktor Frankl. I don't think many people on the earth are. But if you know yourself, you're going to look at that woman, you're going to see her pretty face, you're going to see the nice smelling hair and all this stuff. And if she's giving you, you're going to see her reactions, her actions to you, and you're not going to be dressing him up and wrapping him up in fantasy and what you think it should be. You're going to see them for what they are. And if she's really manipulative, self-centered, not giving you attention on her phone while you're on your date, you're just going to know, I dodged a bullet. I'm not going to think about her one more minute. I'm done. I'm walking out of this thing. She's not taking any more of the real estate in my mind. I'm not going to wonder about her family or she's just a big fat zero. And I'm moving on.
And I think that's what a lot of like what the red pill is trying to help men with, or like it's being able to filter these women, because our default mode, especially in how we grow up today, is just one-itis, like over and over again. So we'll look past all those red flags you just mentioned.
Bro, I wanted to marry my girlfriend in kindergarten. I was like, we're getting married.
And so,
hilarious.
Like all these
dudes are the romantics, man.
Well, yeah, and
100%,
dudes, we like, I think, what did they say? Like women, it's like a slow burn on them falling in love, and men, it's just like boom, like
Yeah.
love it for like, yeah. So anyway,
I love her.
I think that's where the important part though with like, I think even if you have a good frame and you pick the wrong woman, your frame could be screwed. So that's the other part. You need to know what you're looking for and what to vet. Because if you got one of these modern women that think they're equal to a man in every aspect, they're gonna be like, we're in an equal partnership. I'm not submitting to you. Like, and then I think overall that mentality just ended up being they lead.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
So I think that's the other part. You need to know what you're looking for.
Yeah, a lot of the guys in the red pills say don't
that's
even
part about
entertain
frame,
a
right?
feminist person because you're just signing up for a life of hell. And why do that? In reality, the fruit is very, very rare. They're diamonds in the rough. You're lucky, so blessed if you find a woman with good values that submits out of knowledge of Christ. Like Jesus talking to the Pharisees. He quotes Hosea 6:6. He says, God desires knowledge of him, not sacrifice. And like when a woman can submit to you out of knowledge of God, not just because it's something she wants to do, because she knows that this is the purpose and she trusts you in her relationship with Christ, those are rare women, man. They're rare. So I would say, like, get ready for a long haul. Get ready for a long haul. And that's not to make you jaded, when you're encountering women or anything. But it is to say, like, you're going to encounter probably a lot of the same stuff.
I like
over
what
and
Paul
over
said
again.
about it. He's like, you are not your own. You are your wife's. Your wife's not yours. They are yours. And two flesh becoming one. And it really shows to, like when you say submit, it's like who's the cutting edge? Like who deals with that shit show all the time? That's the man. Like that's the guy that's cutting the edge. He's the cutting edge. The wife is more of the support of that. She's more into like how that edge gets cut, and where does it get put? A lot of times, I think submitting is just it's one of those words that comes along with a lot of like, this woman is like below a man. You know what I mean?
In value terms,
right?
too.
Value terms. That's why we opened this whole thing up that way. And I just wanted to reiterate what Paul had said, because I feel like within the language, it sometimes ends up becoming. I even sense myself doing that. That's why I said that. Yeah. But one thing I want to bring up is a lot of these guys. You were saying like, know what you want, have an idea of the kind of woman that you want, and I hear a lot of these red pill guys. It seems like they want just like a
bimbo.
A dumb bimbo. It really doesn't have much going on up here. There's just like a yes woman. And it seems like that's what they want.
Well, I'm not going to critique.
I certainly
don't know
don't.
much about Fresh and Fit, but I know what I see. I've watched a couple of their podcasts. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but it seems like the panel of women that they choose is just reinforcing their narrative. And those women are like idiots. They're like the OnlyFans. When have they went out to find
the women usually I think come to them
really smart,
but
they're still picking them,
quality.
right? Because they know the reactions they're going to get from them.
Yeah,
so it seems
they've dealt with that critique a lot. So one of the things they've done,
I'm sure they have.
One thing they do now is because they don't know these women when they're showing up. So they ask them more information about them because now they're keeping stats and everything. Like what percentage of the women are actually from Miami versus from out of town. They ask them their education level, their job, their career, and they get all this demographic information to try to show like these are not just like high school dropouts. We got PhDs here. We got women that are literally doctors. Okay. So there's a good variety. Okay. Now I think where the bias comes in is I think the real quality women aren't even. They're just not going to go on that podcast.
What are you really getting?
So you're still getting a lot of high educated women, but you're getting like you are getting a bias in that sense.
Yeah. So here's another thing that I think is tying into what Joe is getting at. Being honest about the woman you want, her aesthetic. If you are looking for that porn star model body or something like that, I don't know. You are going to have a brain that comes along with that kind of a frame of woman. There's probably like a 0.0000001% of those women that actually know what they're handling when they get raised. They had great parents, and they're like, listen,
so if you're
hot as and you're going to deal with all this.
Yeah.
So, like, grow up
and not let your character be
Rare,
destroyed by your gorgeous body.
Yeah.
And so,
You
like,
know.
if you're not being, if your frame is so dysfunctional that you're like, I don't understand, I'm dating all these hot girls, but they're all stupid. It's like, well, you really have went down. You're picking from a category that's already, slated towards bad apples. Sorry. So
Yeah.
So let's try and that's where you're developing your frame and you're being honest with yourself. And look, God made me in a way that I'm attracted to this kind of a body style. For men, it's pretty universal. We know what we like. It's not something like
I've been testing on that topic. Like with my best friend, I'll like find a girl I'm kind of attracted to or whatever, and I'll be like,
talk to girls.
huh? No.
Best friend girl. Okay, you're guy.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank
'cause
God. I was like, you're not gonna get an answer.
no. Because I'm curious.
Mike's got a lot of girls that are friends.
Not really.
No, he got a few.
Well, I'd call them acquaintances. I don't hang out with any girls one on one.
Okay.
I don't.
Alright, fair
No
enough.
more friends on that situation. But anyway,
Tell
so
me.
I test. I'm kind of seeing like how objective is beauty, just anecdotally. So like I'll think this girl's like whatever out of 10. Yeah, girls can get mad. We're ranking them out of 10. But I will send them to my friend. I'll send a picture or Instagram to my friend. I'm like, how out of 10? And like every single time we have the same number. And so it's like
Really?
pretty much every time.
Yeah.
And so I think it's.
So what do you think you are, Mike? 1 out of 10.
I think I am. Well,
me a
they have to
number.
do. They always do that with the girls on.
That's a fun thing. It's so stupid.
We have to all rank ourselves.
Yeah.
I give myself 6 or 7.
Yeah, right around there. Joe's like an 8. No, I'm gonna 7.5. I mean, I've seen some gorgeous men. Yeah, well, I mean, like that's
oh
kind of
my
You
God.
don't. You do modeling. You don't get picked to do modeling unless you're probably like an 8.
Yeah, at least an 8. But I've seen modeling, like some of the guys that I've been with. I'm like, whoa, these guys are crazy. Those dudes are just like, chiseled from angel farts, dude.
But girls don't like. They usually don't want those guys.
I
Anyway.
think that well, anyway, I mean, like I know that guys have that struggle. So I mean, it's like you find a girl.
It is a burden.
You know, I think
oh
it's
man,
like
it'd be
if
so
you
great if
find
you
a
didn't care
girl
about
that
beauty.
you really like, and here's one thing I wanted to
It's
bring
a
up
rough
about
thing,
like
man, because if
newbie
you-
guys that haven't dated a lot, like guys that are just getting into the dating scene, coming from a long-term relationship. So if it's like Mike said, make the list about what's important to you, and if you pay attention to your likes and like what inspires you, like what your hobbies are. If you're kind of like nerdy, or if you're brainy, if you like to read, and that kind of stuff, or if you have like a deep depth for like certain arts or something, you're going to be valuing like an intellect in a woman. I can tell you, no matter how beautiful she is, in a couple months, it's just going to be like, you're just not going to find the interest there to live long term. Sexually, 100%. The interest to be with them, no, it's not going to happen. So some of those harder things, you're not going to see them at first. You're just going to be like, she's gorgeous. She completes full sentences. I'm happy.
Good enough.
Yeah. For the younger guys. Some guys might be happy with that. Like, it's why you have to examine yourself. You have to know what you need.
What you
know,
like.
what
Yeah,
what your
what you
needs
like.
are. And I think that's a really big part of that list that you're talking about. And you only know that after making a frame for a long time, knowing what your default is in those horrible positions, because then your true colors really show themselves. And then you're like, oh, this is who I really am. Because a lot of times we live in a persona that we create for ourselves. And then when we get into those stress positions, that whole thing just melts away. Like John said, it's hot in there. That thing just melts, bro. And then
And a lot
left
of
with
what you need
are.
to, and like this is something I thought about, like maybe a variation on spinning plates. Was getting experience with yourself, like being able to represent yourself in a way where you feel you're sincere, genuinely representing who you are. You're not just some like awkward, weird. You go home and you're like, what was I doing?
Undo button. Undo.
I don't know who that was. That person was not me, and embarrassing.
Oh, I think that's
You know,
going to
it's
happen
like,
to all of
well, that's the
them.
whole point. So
I'm
like,
not a fan of
so
what
what-
I act like around.
No, I know, but
I'm
I
not a
mean-
fan of me when I
so
like
this
somebody.
is the
I'm
issue.
like,
So like, so what I'm
embarrassing.
trying to drive home at here is simple. You have a list of stuff you want. You meet a woman who's in the same predicament as you. Is she really giving you a sincere, representation? How much experience does she have with sharing who she is? And what are you really seeing? That's why several dates are usually in order, so you can get past the awkward phase. But as a sort of, I guess you might say, an alternative to spinning plates, is to being able to go into social settings, not where there's alcohol flowing or anything like that, but like a Bible study where we have to speak in front of a group.
You don't know what it's going on in every single buddy's mind. You don't know what's going to come out of your mouth in the next second, but you're confident enough in your thought train to at least elucidate openly without having to have a script on what's going on in your head. You're thinking in real time using your mouth. Okay? And that's what you need to get good at doing so that when your list shows up, or you have a list, she has her list too, you can sort of put forward a representation that you feel is practiced. You know, to some degree, you're being authentic. What's in my head right now? A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Here we are, you know, and you can have spontaneous humor that way.
Shake it up and just see what happens.
Well, a lot of it is that way because, I mean, your interests and what you're passionate about, all those things, if you're not used to expressing yourself in those social situations, they're not going to come out. They're not going to have
like
not
a
going to hear about
well-formed
them.
thought. It's
You're
going
gonna
to
talk
come out
about
like
the-
garbage.
You're
And
going
gonna
to
be
talk
like,
about just
that's how that
superfluous, worthless, disconnected stuff. That's where the practice, I think, from spinning plates. Because I was thinking about this hard because our last spinning plates podcast kind of was like, and we don't know what to do. So I was like, maybe, you know, what's going on here? I think it's talking in front of a group, you know, to some degree, and being able to learn what it feels like to think out loud in front of some peers, you know, and do that with some success.
One part, and the other part of the point is just learning female nature.
Absolutely.
Because I was listening today, Rich Cooper, which is the one podcast I sent you. I think he was the host.
Dude
Got
with the
bald
beard.
guy with a beard.
Yep.
And he was talking about some of the guys are taking this mindset of like, I'm going to go on a mission in my 20s, skipping dating. We're not going out, and I'm just going to work and build myself in my 20s. And then when I hit 30, I'm going to start dating and find a wife. And he was like, well, you need to gain some female nature knowledge. Like, you can't just not
You're going to come
interact
out
with
there
them.
looking like Edward Scissorhands, bro. You'll be like,
And
you know,
so
you might have some good skills chopping bushes,
Edward
man.
Scissorhands got it going.
Dude, he
man.
did,
got
but
the
every
girl.
you know what?
He was being authentic to his frame the whole time. He's like, these scissors, it's what you're getting.
Dude, he was
Right here.
I love Edward, bro.
Chopping
He's
up.
like one of my favorite dudes.
Never
But the
tried to
problem
be
is-
nothing but
The
honest.
problem is he got
The
used
cool kids
because
screwed
he
him
was
over.
he was so below the social interactions. He was used. He was played around with. I mean, you find
I
out that
never
he's
watched
actually
that.
he's actually savvy. Like when
He knows what's going on.
when it comes to like when he's breaking in,
Yeah.
the girl's like, you know, it wasn't my plan. He's like, I know. I knew the whole time. But the point is, Edward came out from living in his house the whole time into a world he never knew. You know, and I don't think that's necessarily, like he was saying, I don't think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
No,
well,
I don't
think-
even think you could accomplish it.
No, and
if
to,
you wanted
to
to.
hold, to understand frame and stuff, you got to understand female nature to a certain point.
Yeah.
Well, it's just fear. You know, they're just like, I'm going to get wrapped up into this, or I'm not going to have a good experience. Why not just make a bunch of money and then get the hot woman that I want when I'm 30? And that's what they're thinking.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
thinking, once I get all this, the house, everything, I'm just going to have the pick of the litter, and it's just going to be easy. And
It's kind of like if you're a kid.
I want you, and it's my way, and we're going home, and we're making babies, and you're making
Yeah.
casserole, and the dishes are going to be clean. And, like, they have this really messed up idea of, like, what it's going to be.
It's like a kid when you think a big guy with big muscles is just like knows karate. It's like, no. And he probably can't defend himself either.
Well-
like, that's a completely different domain.
or that big
Yeah.
guys with muscles are actually strong when
yeah,
a lot of them
sometimes they're
aren't.
not, you know?
Look at the power lifters out there. They're fat dudes, actually.
An idea on that topic too,
Oh,
on
Alex
getting
Jones.
on getting experience, came to mind that probably the RP guys would not be thrilled with because they always preach against the female friends. But one thing I've noticed,
don't know if you can do it, yeah.
I have learned a lot from having female friends in the past. I don't really have them so much now.
Well, Mike, you're such a rare guy. You're so in.
But if you can
Oh, yeah,
because
you got
there's different with
self-control,
like Christian guys, like I'm not trying to sleep with them.
Yeah.
Like whereas most guys, that's their mission. So then when that's your mission, and then you can't really do that.
You're not having friends.
But
That's
yeah,
right.
so because that's not my mission,
They're still
I can-
friends.
I can be. It's worked out to have friends, and then you learn a lot of female nature through them because they like spill everything
Well,
to
yeah,
you.
like
that'd
John
be like the
said,
guy,
and-
like, you know, I could hear Rolo saying, or I could hear like some guy asking Rolo, like, you know, Rolo, I know you strongly advise against being a beta bitch, but what if I just get friend zoned, like with 3 hot chicks?
Then you're going to have to move on, dude.
No, you're missing the point here, Joe. You get friend zoned so that you learn about women, and your point is not to get emotionally invested.
You could do that. I disagree with that because I think
Well, I mean,
that
your point is not to date them.
you're in a
point
safe
is-
zone. You're like, I have no risk, guys. I'm here because I want to be here, and I'm only going to be a friend. And, like, there's no risk in that.
If you think
And
about
I think guys
spinning
need to be able
plates-
to put themselves out there, need to put their nuts on the line, to risk, to fail, to have that happen several times if they're truly going to understand.
Well, yeah,
what
I
it's
mean,
about.
if your goal
Because
is
if they stay in that
but you're
safe,
missing the
warm,
point, Joe.
cuddly,
No.
safe friend zone, dude,
I don't want
it's
them to
not
stay
gonna
in
do
that.
them
I
any
don't want
good.
them to stay in that.
It's
I'm
not
going to
do them
about
any good. They're
It's
going to
sort of
stay in
it's
that
sort of
state
like
of mind.
the
dude.
Karate Kid, wax on, wax off, right? Like he's just waxing on, waxing off. He's not trying to get into the fight.
I'll
yet.
give you the scenario.
So long as he's there
Yeah,
in the
he's-
brain.
I'll give
and
you-
he's
because, I
mean, like,
he's really being the fly on the wall, and he's
in
really doing
when you're
that.
spinning plates, you're not always
Okay.
having sex with the girl.
You know,
So you're
if he's
still
hearing
having,
about
you
her
could kinda
boyfriend
still-
and what's going
he still
on,
could kind of call it a plate, but so here's a scenario that
kind
I
of a
see
little bit.
is that
Plastic
where
plate.
Not
and
telling
where-
you to friend zone, guys.
Yeah,
okay?
don't
It's
do
a
that.
plastic
Not what I'm
plate.
saying.
It's
Drop
not
it
what I'm
doesn't
saying.
break.
it would be
That's
you.
not what I'm
It would
saying.
be you friend zoning her in the end.
That's the point.
So
Thank you.
So yeah, so let's say you do maybe go on a date with a girl, or you find a girl like this happened to me at the gym, where you're curious about her, and then you develop kind of like a friendship, and then you realize like, well, she's not someone I would pursue through different means, through conversation, maybe look at her Instagram, whatever. But that doesn't mean you just chop it off. You
No.
can still use her. You can still
Really,
kind
Mike? I
of
thought
friend
that's
zone
what
her,
you do.
and then.
You're not worth banging. Goodbye.
Basically.
And then you can still
Horrible.
maintain like more of an
Horrible.
acquaintance friendship, I would call it. Like you're not like
You're
talking
benevolently
to me.
hanging out, right? It's
Well,
tricky.
you're not
as
even-
that
you're
is.
not even-
You might fall in love.
Because I mean, here's all
I wouldn't say hang out with them.
Well, here, yeah.
I'm saying you just got an
How you doing?
acquaintance.
you got to
that-
be on your game
Because
you
you
go on
know-
a
you
special
gotta
ops
understand-
mission. It's black ops. You got to know what you could fall in love. You never know what
Here's
can
the
happen.
benefits,
those
though. Like,
things,
because if
dude.
you pursue a girl that you like, okay,
your
which is
frame better
rare,
be locked in.
you're gonna
hard.
get the experience of understanding the woman, right?
Mhm.
You're also gonna get the experience of potential rejection, or understanding yourself in relationship to a woman that you actually like.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot more to be gained than from a benevolent relationship
Yeah.
with it, because and that's what we had issue with when we were talking about spinning plates. It's like you don't want to feel like you're using somebody.
I think
That's
it-
not no
right.
Christian man wants to be like, okay, you're an experiment, and I'm gonna use you. That's gonna it just doesn't feel right.
One example right now, currently, is a friend, a female friend I have, and this is actually just through Instagram. She actually found my Instagram page. I've been running a bunch of like red pill ideas, a bunch of female nature stuff by her, basically just digging in on raw stuff to get her feedback and like I'm kind of curious on what female think about this or that. And I'm kind of I think we're kind of using each other in that, because she's asking me some similar questions, and it's like, well, I could get that information from, like, you're not going to ask those questions to a girl you're interested in. Like, you can get raw information sometimes out of a female friend.
Yeah, but then it's so marginal. It's like so many people are just, when there's emotions invested, people are so careful with what they share.
Yeah,
and
and
they're
that's
like,
why
I was just
Well,
about to say. I was like,
yeah,
because
they're
that's why I meant there's nothing on the line,
Dude, I've
That's
been-
why I began this whole thing with like it's gonna help you marginally, but you're not. You don't really like her, so you're gonna be like more of yourself around her and less of the dumbass that you are around somebody you like.
Yeah.
So you're not gonna get that practice.
Well,
you
yeah.
know? You're gonna get practice.
You better.
about
I would never replace it with actually going and.
no.
But if it's like if this comes,
You're gonna
into your
get to
plate,
you're gonna
like,
get
just
to
a
you
little
could
bit
probably
of it.
hear about like her boyfriend or what she likes. You get this feedback like how a woman's mind work, and if you're really aware of like being a fly on the wall and doing this as a due diligence project, and not falling in love with her, because a lot of the guys, these younger guys, I can see them absolutely falling in love with these quote projects or friends. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That they're learning from, that are women
do
learning
that
about
more
women.
often than not.
They just gonna fall in love with them after a while, and they're not checking off all the boxes, and they're not what they want. Their frame's just weeping over to her
There
side,
is no frame.
So
Yeah.
that's what I mean. That practice is it's tricky business for those
Well, I
younger
want to.
guys.
Okay, since we've been talking for a while, and this is usually what happens when you talk about frame, is you talk about what happens downstream, right?
Mhm.
Because it helps to inform.
What happens when
us-
you lose it?
Yeah, right. What happens when you lose it? So we were going to get into the three sort of metamorphosis stages. Like, if you were to look at a caterpillar, it's a larvae or whatever, and it's a nasty or beautiful worm thing.
It's a beautiful worm.
I've seen some really beautiful caterpillars. Beautiful. and then it's, a butterfly, right? So I could you can see frame, even though frame is existing, like that organism is existing the whole time, it's changing the way that it's interacting for the purpose of a relationship with a woman. Let me say that. That's the context within it which I am speaking, because you may be having frame with your boss, your mom, your dad. All that's going to be happening whether you like it or not. But you have these 3 stages, right? From like 18 to 30, there's 12 years. It's going to be you having enough of your work ethic and discipline in your life to define an identity that's you won't compromise on. You have your goals. You have your interests. Whether they're mainstream or not, you're not sacrificing them for anybody. If she's won't be with you because you like peanut butter and pickle sandwiches, goodbye, right? I'm not going to do it.
You also have your boundaries for her.
Right, and for her too. That's that kind of, I'm a man now. I have a frame worth a woman coming into, right? Or she might even want to be in that frame because I am a person in the world that could help her get a better life, because I'm
desirable.
I'm desirable. I made myself attractive because of the work I put in. All right, first stage, larva. Then you're the beautiful caterpillar walking around, eating leaves. You're eating leaves. What are these leaves? You're negotiating women, negotiating frame. You're finding out what your frame is doing when you like a girl a lot or when you don't like a girl a lot. Your frame, you're negotiating frame, right?
Short-term dating phase.
Short-term, right? I like the eucalyptus. I don't like the eucalyptus. I want to go try the oak, whatever. I'm different leaves, different women, different experiences, negotiating frame, get an understanding for what your frame can do in the market. Then afterwards, you have an LTR, if you're successful, a long-term relationship. Then you have 2 people coming together, and there's a synergy of frame that exists. It's not like you both lose your frame. But at that point, you've become, hopefully if you're believers, one flesh. And you're starting to learn about the last period, this butterfly phase of having your frame, right? So you can kind of ask yourself, if I'm a young guy, where am I in my frame? What's my work to do? Am I cutting down the tree of mahogany to start even building one? Am I like Joe and Mike here? They're negotiating frame with women at this time. Or like me in an LTR, I'm now married. I have a wife that I am
right
frame every day, right? So it's a very different situation depending on where you're at.
So depending on the different situations of wherever you're at, you can lose frame, right? Like, what is losing frame? Is it losing your cash? Is it losing your vehicle? Is it losing a limb? Is it losing your girlfriend, your wife? Is it becoming someone else to please someone else? That's mostly what we're talking about right now. Is being manipulated by people, allowing yourself to change for someone else in a way that you're not necessarily going to be compromising cool long term.
Compromising principle.
Bowl of lentils, right?
Compromising principle.
That's assuming that you actually have some taste and principle and something to begin with. That frame, right? So these things can, like the loss of finance, the loss of a body part, the loss of a person.
Can I imagine?
These types of things can destroy your frame, essentially. It can feel like it's being destroyed. Mm-hmm. And I've heard on Fresh and
brought
Fit
up Viktor
a couple
Frankl
times
because he had his whole life
It's an
chopped
extreme
in half.
example.
Yeah, but that's the point.
I also in Merleau Juiced Rape of the Mind, he goes into all that and the torture and how a mind stays together. Basically, how do they keep frame?
The deepest frame you have.
The deepest frame are the people that do not fall apart are the least conscientious. They're the most fanatical religious people. They're the people that do not lose frame.
Really?
In the
How
highest
cool
order.
is that?
Yeah.
The smartest, most conscientious people, they will talk themselves out of their
because there's always a rational explanation.
There's always
right?
one. It's like we're going crazy.
That's
we should be
fascinating.
going crazy.
I'd
we're
be
being
dead right
tortured
away then.
for 3 days. We haven't been fed. We're naked.
Frame.
It's cold outside. My frame is I'm screwed. Right? Whereas the religious person's like, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You know, they're binary.
Brick wall of obliviousness.
Binary,
How do you
fanatic,
like that?
Insane person. They can take the beatings.
That reminds me of the end of the book of when we read not a Brave New World, the other one before it, 1984.
For sure.
Where
Boot
Will
on the face repeatedly for the end of the time. So
That's a good one.
these things can feel like they're destroying your frame. And I remember looking at Fresh and Fit. You sent me a couple clips because we were talking about how important. We'll pick out finance out of one of these things. Okay, we'll start with that. So let's say you're with a woman, and she is a high earner, career woman, got plenty of cash, and you're thinking to yourself, I like her, but like I'm not like even close to being on her level financially, right? But you're very driven to something. Like you have goals. You're like, I'm going to do this, that. I have a plan. You know, like my life is, I might not be on her, but I have a plan. Let's say you lost something. I heard a lot of these girls that were saying like, it doesn't matter if he has the money so long as he's like goal oriented. That's what they would say.
Yeah.
So I think what to pull from that is that it's not about the money.
Yeah.
It's about the mindset behind it. Yeah. Because the money will come and go.
That's why Rolo was so specific he's like, it's not game.
It's not game.
Yeah, it's not.
Frame.
It's not
game lives within the frame.
Yeah.
Not game. Use the frame within the game.
You can't choose to use frame or not. You either because I mean,
because I want guys to not feel like they have to be like, what color is your Bugatti? Like we were talking about those guys waiting to get 30 years old to find the wife. That's kind of where their mindset's at because they don't actually have that character.
I think it's the girl's not, if she's that high earner and you're making significantly less than her, you're probably not going to get a seat at the table to begin with.
I would agree. Unless you're like an amazing talent.
Unless you got one
I'm saying,
other
like, what if you did have the money, you lost it, and you're on your way back up, for instance?
Well, as long as you're on your way back up. But there's a time clock.
Right.
There's a time clock.
And people got them.
What do you mean by a time clock?
Meaning she's evaluating you. You
know,
like
she'll obviously be patient, but if you take 3 years to get back,
if you're just if you're a con man, well then
I think about Ernest Hemingway. He was the same way in the end of his life. You know, he had these great books, and he was always, and people were so annoyed with him because he was such a fantastic talent, but he was wasted on drugs. And he would always be like, my book's coming out, you know, and eventually he shot his brains out. But like that's the issue with women and people. Like don't lie to yourself when people believe
you had to go down the dark path.
Okay, guys. Well, none of you all are Ernest Hemingway. Let's just get that out of the way. No. I bring that up because that's what can happen with amazing talent is people, they have become so, like if I was so defined by my guitar playing and that was taken from me, like Viktor Frankl would say, that's not who you are.
The problem is Ernest Hemingway was a great writer but a great drinker. And he started off as a great writer and then became a great drinker.
He's a better drinker.
So that's what happened with him. And people can get those two things
the reason why I bring him
conflated.
up as a herald, you know, sort of a cautionary tale is because many men, or most of the high earners, like guys who will make the mistake of identifying their frame and their accolades, those guys run that risk. And I don't think any one of our listeners, you know, your identity is in Christ. Your identity, your frame is rooted in Christ.
Right.
These are things that we have that are not burnable
That's
by
what
fire.
I want to say. Like we could show you a frame on a house. You know what I mean? And some of these old Victorian houses, these castles, bro, like hundreds of years old, standing today. These stone castles, their frames are strong. They're made out of stone. The insides of them have changed many times. They used to look opulent. A lot of these places, you know, even some of the Victorian houses, they change. Like the crown molding changes, the roofs change. You know, all that stuff's going to change. Your finances come up and down. The car you drive changes. Yeah. The clothing you wear changes. Your haircut changes. Not mine in my part, but these types of things change. Yeah. But they're not the bones, the frame, what you are as a man, who you are in that stress situation when the fire's at 110 degrees and you're melting and all that other stuff, the crown molding, the drywall, everything comes off. There's still a frame there. What is that frame?
And that's why
what needs to be there.
We are the Aaron disciples. So we have a specific frame and we have a source. We have the Holy Spirit. This is not something we have to create for ourselves. We have to be obedient. Mm-hmm. And so we have in many ways a hard job, but it's a lot easier because our answers are solid, like those castles. They're solid. They're written in stone. They're not going anywhere. So if you're a young guy that wants to, you know, in this, you know, sort of larvae phase of frame, identify your walk with Christ as the most important thing.
You may want to be with girls. You may want to have experiences. Fine. Do some of that in the way that Christ is leading you to do that. And I would encourage you to let yourself be attracted to some of these women because it's a natural thing. So don't. I see a lot of young men living in lies, living in facades. Like they'll tell themselves they're not attracted to a woman because they're so religiously outfitted that they feel it's a bad thing. It's wrong. No, it's not. It's not wrong. You have to find yourself in those circumstances so you can be a good husband, right? And so most of the young men out there, I'm going to tell you, it's rough. It's not easy. You don't know who you are. You're going to act strangely.
It's a lot harder now today than it ever was
with TikTok and social media and all these kids. Whenever they're supposed to be putting thoughts of their own together, they go on to TikTok and they're like, let's see some dumbasses. And, that's what the world's doing. And, they think that's cool. Girls like that guy for doing that thing. And what did she say? Oh, my God, I want that reaction. So I'm going to do what he's doing. People aren't taking their thought time enough to build a frame. And they're taking other people's frames, which is normal. But it's gotten to like a conflated place to where I believe – guys aren't spending enough time thinking, writing down, planning, strategizing, getting down to the cold, hard facts of like getting shit done in their lives to where they can actually go on a date and have fun and be excited about it. Like, oh, I got a girl, I'm going on a date. Oh, I want to go out to this place and do this naturally because that's what they want to do because they've been working all week, or doing this other stuff all week. They're not like, will she like this? Oh, my God.
I'm going to do it anyway, whether she comes with me or not.
I'm going to have a blast.
I'm going to have fun doing it.
She comes with me or not.
That's right.
I'm going to enjoy this food. I'm going to enjoy this drink. It's going to be great.
And so this is a quick recap. Frame is not game. Frame is not something you impose on somebody. You don't force people into your frame. With your frame, it doesn't work. You will have to negotiate frame the same way that Martin Luther King had to negotiate freedom for black people, even though it was an inalienable right? You will have to negotiate frame, which might sound like pushing somebody into your frame, but that's what a man does. He stands up for what's true, and he makes the choice in the burning fires. You have to develop your frame depending on where you're at in life. You might be a 40-year-old who's still in the larvae stage. That's going to happen, sad as that is. You're going to have to really self-reflect. I encourage you to buy the book, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. You're going to learn a lot about frame right there. Look at what negotiators in the police department do with, any of the serious situations they have to negotiate through. It's another great place to learn, as well as the dating market. Rollo Tomassi's books, tons of books. And like Mike was saying, you need to be selective on the resources you use when you are getting acquainted and learning about Red Pill. There is a ton of crap out there. There's a lot of people who claim Red Pill, and it's couldn't be further from the truth. So you need to be selective about that. Right?
Yeah. Well, and the foundation, like we said, starts with the Bible and who your identity is with Christ. Our foundation is of the entire footing of our frame is that. And that's why we have the kind of upper hand, like you said. It's easier because we have an objective kind of foundation, whereas everyone else is kind of flowing around with culture. Mm-hmm. Culture might say tomorrow something's different or something's better than it was before. And we have that. I would say our foundation ends up being our character and our integrity. Amen. Whereas the worldview version of this is a lot of times more put on those
and I hear
material things like you're talking about.
Cast about like a ship in the ocean, or, your foundation's built on sand. Like you said, what's strong today might not be strong tomorrow. And then you have this lobotomization of your character. That is uncomfortable. And it's cool because what Joe said about Juice Merlot, right? The men and women of faith, you can't break them.
Right.
The rational minds, the Christopher Hitchens, the people who can talk, if they're under enough stress, they'll talk themselves out of it, right? What's the point in being underneath that, right? There is no point.
Right.
So just go. And so this is the beauty of truth. Truth is the freeing element of us to be able to enjoy life. We find our identity in Christ. He gives us these things if we're obedient. But obedience demands discipline. It demands putting forward an effort every day, praying, reading the Bible. Don't just say you're a Christian and not know what's in here and suck the tit of your preacher every Sunday. You're not doing it right.
And certainly don't just read the Bible and nothing else. Go out there and read other books. Go out, experience the culture in the world. And this is to say some of those more sheltered style Christians that they're safe in their church, in their surroundings, in their home. They have those trips to, their mission trips every year. They have a couple of them set up. You know what I mean? They're not really living out there.
This is our outreach
I'm just calling
program.
out to some of them
No,
as
you're
well.
right. You
is
should.
that they're going, oh yeah, I'm doing all that stuff, and it's like, wait, dude, but you have to you have to become like a Greek. You have to become like a Corinthian.
I got news
you have
for
to
you.
become like these people if you want to touch those people. If
This
you want to
book-
understand those people.
This book right here, if you look in the New Testament,
Yeah.
there.
It's not a moral high ground. Is
Well,
what I'm
here's
trying
just
to say.
an interesting point for you to roll around in your head. If you're just like the Bible and only the Bible, okay. If I could choose one book, obviously it would be the Bible. That's not the point Joe's making, okay? What he's saying is the same thing Paul said. The truth of God is in the world around you, in his creation, people.
Look at
animals,
the
things.
deists.
But here's a cool fact
his
for you to
creation
roll
speaks
around
for
in your
itself.
head.
Scientists, people that are
Here's-
doing science, that are saving
That's
people's
right.
lives, that are actually going in and getting into God's creation. His signature is in all those things. Those people are doing they're getting in touch with with Christ.
Stephen
with
Mayer
God.
has a cool
You know,
book called
and I-
Signature in the Cell. It's
There
a
you
beautiful
go.
book.
It's in your
Beautiful
DNA. I just want to put that out there because I don't think it's put out there enough. It's
Yeah.
strongly been put
Well-
on my heart because it's just my relationship.
You
with
don't
Christ
want to
has
see
been-
your brothers and sisters
changed that way.
stifled by conventions of the West, because that's really what it is. We say that at our Bible study all the time. You have resources. Use them. We read C.S. Lewis. We love C.S. Lewis. We read
Yep.
G.K. Chesterton. We love these guys. These guys help us to understand they're our brothers and sisters in Christ. They are the body that we're supposed to be feeding and organizing ourselves with, aligning ourselves with, right?
I like
So
those.
we need to
Dostoevsky,
connect with
Carl
them.
Jung,
And even some of the,
a lot of the
and you have to be
philosophers,
careful with
Stoics.
this, but some of the secular resources are great too. So you need to learn from
Well,
them. Right?
I think that's like you look at some of the cults like Jehovah's Witness, they don't want their people touching anything outside their doctrines, and I think that is the kind of opposite of how we view Christianity. It's like if your faith is like got a good foundation, your Bible, like that allows you to see truth in other things, and then also have discernment on where the garbage is.
That's right.
And I think that's the big thing with the red pill, and the
Good.
problem with the Christian community too. On like they just like have shut the door on it.
Yeah.
And
sad.
it's like there's a lot of worthwhile truths in there for human nature and the interaction between the sexes that if you view it through a Christian lens, it's very valuable
Well,
information.
in many ways, it overlaps with what we read.
Yeah.
And it's reinforcing what God's already put in the literature for
Yeah.
us. And in many ways, it's gotten away from us. It's a slippery eel.
Yeah, so
You know,
much of
so-
it is like the logical conclusions. A lot of the red pill, you could say, data is just traditional values.
Many, yes.
It's
I
really
would
just
agree.
traditional values, and a lot of
And that's why you got to be selective with your resources, right?
Yeah.
Because you can run into these red pillars they're far from it.
They're
They're wearing the red hat.
they'll
They're
use
not.
their the biology arguments as like, well, men are wired to be promiscuous, so why would I
Yeah.
ever be faithful to one woman? Blah blah, and they'll use those.
It's like I'm also wired to be a murderer.
Yeah,
You
we're
know, I
wired
wanna,
to do a lot of
I'm
stupid
a war,
stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm
that's-
not doing that, bro. My landlord, he's pissing me off a lot.
yeah, so
um,
there's you got to. I mean, but I think like adults can figure this stuff out.
I agree.
Yeah,
it's not
I agree,
that-
but
I think,
okay.
well, you say adults.
I wanted
John
to get
said
this,
like you have 40-year-old worm.
well, yeah,
And,
100%.
people get safe and they get fearful, and then they think, "Oh, there's not enough God out here.
Well,
if I
there's a
go
lot of
over here, if
Christians-
I venture out here, if I do this, God's not going to be there."
Oh, man.
You know what I mean? It's like
It's kinda
that's
the
not
same thing.
true. It's not true. He's everywhere. He made it all. It's all got his signature on it. He wants it this way. Okay, so like having a bit of faith in who he is going to go a long way for you trying to get to know people, get to understand this world, and not be so insulated in your safe little warm spot.
Yeah.
For a lot of these people. And that goes for the red pill guys too. Because
Well,
then
really-
you got the MGTOW guys, you got the black pill guys, you got these guys that are just, they're not going out and dating. They're not talking to the girl that they like at the gym. They're not just doing it, dude. They're not going out and saying, "Hi, I like you," or "I think you're beautiful." And then seeing where things go and take a breath before you shit your pants and just see what happens. Maybe she might say something. She might say, "I like you too." She might say, "Oh, cool. What are you up to?" And then you have to pause and think of what you're actually up to and what you want to do that day instead of what you think she
Don't
wants
make
to
this
hear.
Weird.
Yeah.
Just
Don't make
say
this weird.
what you're actually doing. Take another deep breath and see what happens. And most of these guys are not doing that enough. And I'm just saying that's in the red pill and it's also in the Christian. In both those hemispheres, I just thought I'll enjoy that correlation that you made.
Yeah. So the quick fact I want to get out. So in Peter and in the book of Jude, they both reference the Book of Enoch. Okay, Second Temple literature. It didn't make the canon. There's old manuscripts that verify that this was a book that they Jewish in the Second Temple, meaning before Christ and even after Christ, they would read it a lot, and it's in the Bible. So that might be something you want to check if Peter and Jude were talking about it. This should also be a lesson to us to enjoy stuff and listen to what the Holy Spirit is impressing on your heart when you're receiving information from different writers, different people, different art, different stuff like that, and not to be a pigeonhole yourself. Because really what you're doing is you're condescending on God's magnificent glory, and you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't be like only King James, nothing else, or these sort of condescensions you make because you think you're doing the right thing, but you're not allowing the Spirit of God to impress upon your heart things. The narrative has been shut down at that point. You're not having a living relationship.
No, there's no living relationship.
So
It's cut and
you need
dry.
to allow that to happen, and that's by no
Dry
means
as hell.
because again, you can come to these intersections where like, oh, that sounds progressive. Well, your relationship with Christ is progressive, and it should be. You should be enjoying new elements of His personhood.
It's two different definitions of progressive, though, from what people are going to take
exactly
progressive as.
Absolutely, and that's why I use the word, because I think it should be in this context used because it's progressing. It's getting better, not progressing in the way that really progressive Christianity in all truth should be called
Digressing.
well, not digressing or not disintegrating, but to come apart. To really decay. That's what we're looking for. That's what I'm so excited about in my walk. Whenever I get stuck in one of the deserty periods, and it feels like your prayer life, your reading life, all these, you just feel like it's stale. I'm always encouraged by that because He's always blowing my mind. God is always blowing my mind, and He always will come in and sweep you off your feet. And it's one of the best things when it happens. And He'll continue to do that.
He's ever limitless.
Absolutely.
And He's going to be blowing your mind. And if He's not blowing your mind, you're worshiping the wrong God, y'all.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that was a fun discussion. I had a lot of fun with you guys today. It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think hopefully the audience will have some use out of it.
Yeah, comment in the sections, guys. If you guys, anything that's on your mind, we're going to try and engage more and be more in the comments and share your thoughts.
What are your guys' main fears dating? Why don't you date? Why do you date?
Tell us.
Yeah.
And like the video, subscribe.
Please.
All those other podcaster lines that
we
say.
never say.
Yeah.
ever.
By the way, Mike, let's share that because when is our deadline for the YouTube thing with the hours?
That's irrelevant to them.
Well, we can ask him for help.
Hey, how about
Let's ask him for help.
just make
They'll love to help.
videos that they want to watch?
Yeah.
No. Look.
We
Like and subscribe, guys. This is our first year, okay, doing this. This is going to be coming to an end at some point. I'm not exactly sure when, but it would be very beneficial to us if you guys would, tell your friends, do the sharing part if you enjoy it. Get them to like, subscribe, and watch because it's going to help us get past that second step. And we're trying to do that. So if you enjoy the
algorithm.
content,
Yeah.
go ahead and do us a solid by doing that. We really enjoy it. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
A peace.
No, we're going to say our prayer.
Close in
y'all.
prayer.
Thank you, Father, for these men and our brothers and sisters. And you've made things the way they are, and you've given us the key. You've given us the Holy Spirit. So in dating, let us rely upon you for our frame, for navigating our own emotions, for discovering who we are. We know our fulfillment is found in you. So let's be open to each other in the church. Let's learn from each other. Let's enjoy the people that you made us to be and encounter these things with a willing spirit and obedient spirit. And we pray blessings on all of our listeners. And we pray safety for Mike and the brother behind the curtain that makes this thing go round, David. Yeah, we pray that they have an absolutely amazing trip slicing and dicing all those mountains skiing. In Jesus' name, amen.